Much of Australia's wool, the finest in the world, comes from flocks whose ancestors grazed on properties which are now the sites of big cities. Canberra, Australia's young federal capital city, was built on beautiful pastoral land, and the sportsmen enjoyed good shooting where a city stands today. The old homestead of Yarralumla Station has its place in Australia's history because there the federal cabinet held its first meeting in Canberra. And at peaceful Tuggeranong, another old homestead, the Australian official war history was compiled. The first sod in the huge undertaking was turned by the late Honourable P.G. Stewart on the 28th of August 1923. Modern methods were employed for constructing the most modern city in the world, and how different from those used by the Romans when building Londinium, or London, nearly 2,000 years ago. Just as good roads were necessary in those days, so is it essential that good roads should connect Canberra with Melbourne and Sydney. Rich clay deposits provide the material for making bricks and tiles on the spot. Locally made bricks were used almost exclusively in building Canberra. The hitherto peaceful valley was transformed into a gigantic bivouac of workmen living under canvas. Almost overnight, the landscape was changed. From Mount Ainsworth, we see Parliament House and Red Hill, where thousands of sheep used to graze peacefully. We now see the Hotel Ainslie with the city in the distance. The name Ainslie perpetuates the memory of a man who is believed to have been the first white man to locate the site of the federal territory. The panorama from Mount Ainslie also includes the delightful suburb of Braddon. The first Commonwealth Parliament in Canberra was opened on the 9th of May, 1927, by the Duke of York, who, accompanied by his charming Duchess, received an enthusiastic reception from a large gathering of people representing official and public life in Australia, who came to witness the historic opening ceremony. The Guard of Honour, the uniformed Australian and foreign dignitaries, and the delightful sunshine made the occasion a memorable one. In the royal speech, His Royal Highness referred to Australia as one of the great self-contained units of the British Empire. The Duke and Duchess of York took their places in the Senate chamber, where, since that historic occasion, important decisions have been reached on matters of great importance to Australia. Parliament House dominates the federal capital city, which may now be regarded as the centre not only of government, but also of learning and of culture in Australia. Canberra, which is a euphonious Aboriginal name, has been designed by men who visualized a city of beauty and symmetry. In the interior courts of Parliament House, one finds a harmony of design in keeping with the imposing exterior. In the cool shade of these courts, statesmen find the calm, restful solitude an aid to reflection on the serious problems of state which confront them. In such an environment, a poet might find inspiration to write his sonnet, or perhaps a composer to evolve a symphony. Old Yarralumla has been modernized and is now the official residence of His Excellency, the Governor-General of Australia. And this beautiful home is the residence of Australia's Prime Minister. It is typical of Canberra's architecture, and the pleasing uniformity of design is further exemplified by other administrative buildings, for instance the Post Office, and the fine buildings in which are located the various departments of the federal government. No other important capital city in the world could compare with Canberra for the profusion of floral beauty, which is one of its most distinctive features. Everywhere are to be seen flowers and shrubs and blossoming trees which make Canberra a veritable garden city. The Hotel Canberra, with its modern appointments, excellent cuisine, its tennis courts and croquet lawns, provides first-class accommodation for visitors to Australia. It is reached by perfect roads passing through leafy avenues of trees and shrubs. Transport facilities are up to date, because an adequate motor bus service operates over the federal capital's network of roads. Another of the first-class hotels is the Hotel Kurrajong, which is beautifully situated. Visitors to Canberra will enjoy the comfort as well as the healthy and invigorating climate and the varied interests. Looking from Red Hill, the panorama includes Mount Ainslie, and in the distance we see the table-topped hills which surround the natural amphitheatre in which nestles Canberra. At the foot of the hill on the left is the former Duntroon Military College, where the nucleus of Australia's pre-war army was trained. The lot of those who live in this modern city is cast in pleasant places. Everywhere, the homes, whilst in keeping with the architectural style of Canberra, possess an individuality of their own, each house being built in its own spacious grounds. Canberra has rightly been called the Garden City. She has adopted the advantages of other great cities, whilst avoiding those features which are not in keeping with the principles of modern town planning. At every point, delightful vistas enfold themselves, a church spire, beautifully tended private gardens, everywhere a profusion of flowers. Canberra citizens are proud of their gardens and are fortunate in having an abundant water supply. The Cotter Dam is not only an economic asset, it is a delightful beauty spot and is already famed for its excellent trout fishing. The country villas of the Roman aristocracy of Caesar's day, with their fountains playing merrily in the sunlight, could hardly have been more beautiful than the villas of the New World's most modern city. Often one is tempted to think of Canberra as of some Arcadia. One can almost imagine the nymphs and fauns tripping gaily through the gardens, though such airy sprites can have little in common with the labor-saving efficiency of electric heating and cooking devices with which all Canberra's up-to-date homes are equipped. The Molonglo River meanders idly by, and the graceful willows are a picturesque contrast to the bridges which have replaced the fords. In the Australian Institute of Anatomy is housed the famous collection presented to the Commonwealth by Sir Colin Mackenzie. Canberra has several excellent shopping centres, which are quite a distinctive feature of the architecture of the city. The shops are commodious and are grouped in special areas for the convenience of residents, who are protected by the picturesque verandas from the heat of the summer and from the winter rains. Few cities are as fortunate as the federal capital in that there is no parking problem. The civic administration has reserved ample space for parking areas conveniently near each shopping centre. In the midst of the newness of Canberra, there stands one old and historic landmark, the Church of St. John the Baptist. This church was erected by a pioneer named John Campbell, who settled on land in this vicinity in 1823. The Australian School of Forestry meets the needs for preserving Australia's forest areas, and young students are thoroughly trained to be expert foresters. Young Australians at Canberra are a sturdy sample of British youth, and they are fortunate not only in their healthy environment, but also because there are excellent schools for both primary and secondary education. The Kingston Shopping Centre is typical of Canberra's suburban centres, and the shops are a constant source of attraction, especially for the youngsters, at least the sweet shops, and Mrs. Canberra appreciates the bus service on her shopping excursions. Australians are lovers of sport, and Canberra's young cricketers hope to become Trumpers, McCartneys, or Bradmans, though of course tennis has its staunch supporters too. In the winter, the more vigorous football holds sway. Some play Australia's own game, some play rugby, and still others support soccer. But for the less energetic, there's an excellent golf links where picturesque hazards abound. A good round of golf has often helped to smooth the creases from the brow of many a statesman, and perhaps improve his vocabulary too, and not only in Australia. In the evening hours, one appreciates the peaceful atmosphere which pervades the leisurely Molonglo River, and there are many delightfully secluded walks along the bypaths amongst the blossom-covered trees. Canberra is a vision city, a city of flowers, but Canberra is, too, one of the great cities of the world.